The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the lush, verdant landscape of Costa Rica. I had been invited on this vacation by my old college friend Mark, who had recently come into some money and decided to splurge on an exotic getaway. Joining us were his girlfriend Lisa and our mutual friend Kevin. The four of us were eager for adventure and ready to explore the hidden treasures of this beautiful country. After a few days of lounging on pristine beaches and hiking through tropical rainforests, Mark, ever the thrill-seeker, suggested we venture off the beaten path. He had heard rumors of an ancient hidden temple deep within the jungle, untouched by tourists and locals alike. Intrigued by the possibility of discovering something truly unique, we all agreed to the plan. The next morning, armed with a map we had purchased from a local shop, we set off early. The path was rugged and overgrown, but the sense of mystery and excitement propelled us forward. As we trekked deeper into the jungle, the sounds of civilization faded away, replaced by the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. After several hours of hiking, we stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an ancient temple, its stone walls covered in vines and moss. It was a sight to behold, and we approached it with a mix of awe and trepidation. The entrance was partially obscured by vegetation, but we managed to clear it away and step inside. The interior of the temple was dimly lit by the sunlight filtering through cracks in the ceiling. As our eyes adjusted to the darkness, we saw that the walls were adorned with intricate carvings and paintings, depicting scenes of rituals and offerings. At the far end of the chamber stood an altar, surrounded by piles of gold coins, jeweled artifacts, and other treasures. But amidst all the glittering wealth, one object stood out, a mask, positioned prominently on the altar. It was unlike anything we had ever seen, crafted from a dark, polished wood and inlaid with precious stones. The mask seemed to call to us, drawing us closer with an almost magnetic pull. "Wow, look at that," Mark said, his voice filled with wonder. "That must be worth a fortune." Lisa nodded, her eyes wide with fascination. "It's beautiful. I wonder what it's for." Kevin, ever the skeptic, frowned. "I don't know, guys. This place gives me the creeps. Maybe we shouldn't touch anything." But Mark was already reaching for the mask. He lifted it carefully, examining it in the light. As he did, a shiver ran down my spine. There was something unsettling about the mask, something that felt wrong. "Let's take it with us," Mark said, breaking the spell. "It'll make an amazing centerpiece for my collection." Reluctantly, we agreed, and Mark placed the mask in his backpack. We spent a few more minutes exploring the temple before heading back to our lodge, our packs now laden with treasures. That night, as we sat around the fire, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The mask seemed to cast a shadow over our celebration, its presence a dark cloud on the horizon. But I pushed the thoughts aside, convincing myself that it was just my imagination. The next few days passed in a blur. We continued our adventures, but strange things began to happen. Mark, who had always been the life of the party, became withdrawn and irritable. He complained of headaches and nightmares, and he seemed to be losing weight rapidly. Lisa was worried, but Mark brushed off her concerns, insisting he was fine. Then one night we heard a scream. Rushing to Mark's room, we found him thrashing in his bed, his eyes wide with terror. He was clutching the mask, his fingers white-knuckled around its edges. "Get it off me!" "Get it off!" he screamed. We pried the mask from his hands and set it aside, but the damage was done. Mark's health deteriorated rapidly after that. He was plagued by hallucinations and fits of rage, and no doctor could explain what was happening to him. One evening, as the sun set over the jungle, Mark's condition took a turn for the worse. He became violent, attacking Kevin and Lisa in a frenzy. We managed to subdue him, but it was clear that something had taken hold of him, something malevolent and beyond our understanding. Desperate for answers, we returned to the temple, hoping to find a way to break the curse. As we entered the chamber, the air grew heavy with an oppressive energy. The mask lay on the altar, seemingly waiting for us. A sense of dread washed over me as I approached it. There was an inscription on the base of the altar that we had missed before, hidden beneath the dust and dirt. As I brushed it away, the words became clear. "He who takes the mask shall be cursed. His soul bound to the darkness, his life forfeit to the void." Horror filled me as I realized the gravity of our mistake. We had unleashed a curse upon Mark, and there was no way to reverse it. The mask had claimed him, and it would not rest until it had consumed his soul. We left the temple in silence, the weight of our actions heavy on our shoulders. Mark's condition worsened, and within days he succumbed to the curse. His body was found lifeless in his bed, the mask beside him, its dark eyes staring into nothingness. As we buried Mark, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the spirits of the temple were still with us, their anger and sorrow palpable. The vacation had turned into a nightmare, and the memory of that cursed mask would haunt us forever. Ravensport was a small town with its own share of ghost stories and legends, but nothing could compare to the horrors we had unleashed in that exotic jungle. The mask had claimed one life, and I feared it would not be the last. The curse had been set in motion, and its dark legacy. And though we had escaped the curse, I knew that the spirit of the mask would always be out there, watching and waiting. Ravensport was a small town with its own share of ghost stories and legends, but nothing could compare to the horrors we had unleashed in that exotic jungle. The mask had claimed one life, and I feared it would not be the last. The curse had been set in motion, and its dark legacy would continue to haunt those who dared to disturb the treasures of the temple. Back in Ravensport, we tried to resume our lives, but the shadow of what had happened in Costa Rica loomed over us. Lisa and Kevin were plagued by nightmares and a constant sense of dread, just like I was. We met often, trying to make sense of everything and find a way to move forward. But it wasn't long before strange occurrences began to happen. Lisa reported hearing whispers in the night, voices that seemed to come from nowhere. Kevin saw fleeting shadows in his apartment, shapes that vanished as soon as he turned to look. And I felt a cold, malevolent presence in my own home, a feeling of being watched that I couldn't shake. One night as we gathered at Lisa's place, she showed us her latest discovery. "I found an old diary," she said, her voice trembling. "It belonged to a local historian. He wrote about a similar mask found in another part of the world. He called it the Mask of Despair. It's been linked to numerous deaths and disappearances over the centuries." Kevin frowned. "So, what do we do? How do we stop it?" Lisa shook her head. "I don't know, but it seems like the mask has a life of its own. It feeds on fear and despair. The historian believed that the only way to stop it was to destroy it, but no one has ever succeeded. We decided to try and destroy the mask. It was our only hope, but finding the mask wasn't going to be easy. When Mark died, the authorities took all of his belongings, including the mask, for investigation. We had to get it back. We broke into the police storage facility late one night, our nerves on edge. The facility was eerily quiet, and every creak of the floorboards seemed deafening. We found the evidence room and began our search. The mask was there, locked away in a glass case. Kevin smashed the glass with a crowbar, and we retrieved the mask. It felt cold and heavy in my hands, and the eyes seemed to stare into my soul. We hurried out of the facility, our hearts pounding. We drove to an isolated spot in the woods, a place where we could be alone. We built a large bonfire and threw the mask into the flames. For a moment it seemed to work. The mask began to crack and burn, but then the fire roared with an unnatural intensity. The flames turned green, and a gust of icy wind extinguished the fire in an instant. The mask lay in the ashes, completely unharmed. "That's not possible," Lisa whispered, her face pale. A low, guttural laugh echoed through the trees. We spun around but saw nothing. The laugh grew louder, closer, until it was all around us. "We need to get out of here," Kevin said, his voice shaking. We ran back to the car, but it wouldn't start. The laughter continued, now mixed with whispers and cries of anguish. The darkness seemed to close in on us, suffocating and relentless. In the weeks that followed, the terror only escalated. Kevin was the first to go. He was found dead in his apartment, his face twisted in a look of sheer terror. The mask was there, placed neatly on his chest. Lisa and I knew we were next. We tried to stay together, thinking we could protect each other, but it was no use. The mask haunted us, appearing in mirrors, in our dreams, in the corners of our vision. It was relentless, feeding on our fear, growing stronger with each passing day. One night, I woke to find Lisa standing at the foot of my bed, her eyes vacant and unseeing. She held the mask in her hands. "It's calling us," she said in a monotone voice. "We can't escape it." Before I could react, she placed the mask on her face and let out a blood-curdling scream. Her body convulsed and then went limp, collapsing to the floor. I fled, running into the night, but the mask followed me. I could feel its presence, a dark, suffocating force that grew stronger with each step. There was no escape. As the days turned into weeks, I became a shell of my former self. The mask appeared everywhere, a constant reminder of the curse that had claimed my friends and would soon claim me. I knew my time was running out. In a final, desperate attempt, I returned to the temple alone. The jungle seemed even more foreboding than before, and every step felt like a march toward my doom. As I entered the temple, the air grew thick with a palpable sense of anger. The mask lay on the altar, waiting for me. I picked it up, feeling its cold, malevolent energy coursing through me. There was no way to destroy it, no way to break the curse. The mask had won. As I placed the mask on my face, the darkness enveloped me. My screams echoed through the temple, unheard by anyone but the spirits that dwelled within. The cursed mask remains in the temple, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to stumble upon it. Its dark legacy continues, a never-ending cycle of fear and despair, and those who dare to disturb its resting place will find themselves drawn into the same nightmare, their souls forfeit to the void. The mask's curse will never be broken. Its hunger for fear and despair is insatiable, and it will continue to claim victims for all eternity. The ancient spirits that guard the temple will see to that, ensuring that the mask's dark power remains unchecked. And so, the mask sits in its rightful place, biding its time, whispering to the curious and the greedy, luring them into a fate worse than death. Also, in the end, just don't forget, it wasn't just a puppy, so you better click that subscribe button.